Hey there, I'm Reverend Dan. We are the Soul Evolution Collaborative, and this is Strip Down Sunday, where we unchurch your Sunday experience. So, welcome. We are thrilled to have this time with you to offer some inspiration, some spiritual upliftment, and hopefully a new take on life in a uniquely Soul Evolution Collaborative kind of way. We have stripped down Sunday mornings to offer you a streamlined experience that hopefully fits your needs. We have this really strong desire to bring an updated message of inspiration to the world at a time when it seems like we all might need it the most. The Soul Evolution Collaborative is dedicated to personal transformation and communal evolution. So, two really quick logistics before we jump in. Everything that you could possibly want to know about us, about the Soul Evolution Collaborative community, can be found at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. There is a plethora of content available, videos to watch, inspiration, messaging, education. There's info about our events, our Tuesday night live videos, our Wednesday night meditations, our Thursday night event, The Gathering, and keep an eye out for some upcoming information on some new events as well. Second, it is communities like this with missions like ours that actually create change in the world. And we believe that is what we are doing. We are creating this new earth, this new way of life that actually benefits everyone. And so if you are in any way able to help support this mission financially, we will gratefully accept your donations. Those can be made at soulevolutioncollaborative.org as well. There's a donate button right in the menu. Similarly, if you know anyone else that is able to financially support this mission, we know that there are great philanthropic donors out in the world who are looking for great places. Share the word. And of course, we are also gratefully inviting everyone to support this mission by being involved, by jumping in, by being part of the community, by participating, by making use of the website and everything that is there. So let us now jump into the message, the meaning, the influence, the inspiration for today. You can't change your plan if you don't have one. That is a message that has been loud and clear to me my whole life. I don't even know if it's a phrase, a quote that's attributed to anyone, but it's something that I have literally heard over and over pretty much my whole life. You can't change your plan if you don't have one. Which is kind of sounds. That's a little weird because the whole point of a plan is so that you know what you're doing. Why would you want to change it? If that's the plan, we're going to follow the plan. But there is a predicament in every plan because as soon as you create the plan is now solidified. That plan is only that one way, and universe knows never, ever, ever does it go that way. An interesting story came to mind around this idea of planning. In the state of Maryland, in the 1950s, there was conversation beginning around the idea of a new highway called the Inter-County Connector. This was going to connect Montgomery County and Prince George County and relieve all of this traffic and create transit for commuters and easy access to the airport in Baltimore. I mean, all of these great reasons, but there was such resistance to it because it would be cutting through all of this natural area and through towns, and there was massive resistance to this. And so the idea of this kind of bubbled around a bit for about 30 years or so. And it wasn't until the 1980s that there actually became some solid planning for this highway. But what happened was the conversation that was going on in the 1950s, 30 years later in the 1980s, was totally different. So whatever plans they had, well, those are out the window, and now we're starting over. And in the 1980s, we're looking at these plans. And the thing with building highways, I don't have much experience or any at all, really, except for having researched some of this. The thing with building highways is you have to try and predict what traffic might be like by the time that the highway is completed. Now, if you try and predict what the traffic is going to be like by the time the highway is completed, right? Because you don't just have a plan and build a highway and poof, right? I mean, it can take decades at times to complete highways. In the case of Interstate 95, it's taken 60 years and it's still not done. So not only do you have to consider where is this highway going to be, what is this going to look like, what's traffic going to look like when this highway is complete, but then if it's what is needed at the point of completion, well, then at any point in the future of that moving forward, that highway is going to be out of date. So you have to try and project far enough into the future that it actually exceeds the needs of its own date of completion. Well, that never happens, apparently. It's so traffic and congestion and commuters and just the amount of people on the road has always far surpassed, as far as I'm aware, as according to my limited Google search, as far as I'm aware, that just doesn't happen. And so with this inter-county connector, they would create a plan and say, all right, this is what our plan is. And then there would be resistance. And so the plan was to predict this far in advance, but there was resistance and the plan got trashed. And there would come back, the team, whoever, would come back with a new plan. And now this is, okay, now we're predicting traffic and cars on the road up until this new point. And then there would be resistance again. It wasn't until 2007 that some sort of solidified plan actually took place and construction began. The road was not completed. We're talking like 18-mile road. The road was not completed until 2014. And so by the time this plan was actually put into place, it was like 20 years out of date by the time it would actually be completed. And then they were creating it for the traffic that they predicted to be in 2014. Not any. So now, even if it were adequate for 2014, for the traffic that would show up in 2014, it's now out of date for anything moving forward. And this just seems so crazy. We have this plan, and as soon as the plan is in place, it's out of date. But how else would we do it? How else would we create roads? We can't actually predict far enough out in advance to know what traffic's going to be like. Add into this the idea, I did a lot of research. Add into this the idea of the bigger we build a highway. So we would think, logic we would think, the bigger we build the highway, the more space there's going to be, the more lanes, the more room there's going to be, the less congestion. But really, what has actually happened? The more lanes we build, the more cars show up. And so the more space we create, the more congestion there actually is on those roads. It's really crazy. Anyway, I thought all of this was such a super clear example of this predicament of a plan. As for anything, as soon as we create a plan for anything, as soon as we create anything solidified, that plan becomes out of date because it doesn't take into account all of the things that could happen between creating that plan and implementing that plan and then following that plan through. So there is this predicament of a plan. We need plans to organize, to make sense of things, to create processes and procedures in workspaces, in our lives, or wherever. We need a plan just to know where we're going. What are we doing, whether it's in life, whether it's with a business, whether it's with our personal purpose in life, whatever it is. At least we need a plan to know where we're going. We need a plan to how are we going to pay the bills. But then to follow that plan very easily limits us to the idea of that plan. There are always unforeseen circumstances in life that do not coincide with our plan. And most often we think of these things as bad, right? Unforeseen circumstances are bad because they go against the plan. This makes the plan out of date. And yet, when has there ever not been unforeseen circumstances? Every plan has met unforeseen circumstances. So in a way, aren't those unforeseen things kind of foreseen? We don't know exactly what they are, but we can certainly foresee there will be things that do not fit into this plan. And yeah, certainly there are events in life that we would put into the bad category. And yet, uh, just because something shows up opposing our plan doesn't inherently make it a bad thing. So part of our plan, perhaps, is to foresee unforeseen circumstances. Um, and I think the question that we need to ask then is, have we trained ourselves to see unforeseen circumstances that are good? Or have we just imagined that anything that goes against the plan must be bad? So what is the solution? What is the solution to foreseeing unforeseen circumstances and leaving space in our plan that some of these might be good? Some of these things that are happening to us might actually be happening for us. And so that brings us to the topic for today, living everyday wonder. And wonder is actually the key to staying in the creative flow of life. And this is something you have heard us talk about quite a bit, but maybe not quite in this context. We talk about curiosity all the time, remaining curious, and all of the benefits of curiosity. Well, wonder is really similar. Wonder is a really similar state of mind. It puts us in a place, a mindset that doesn't need that consistent and definitive knowing. Wonder is that state of mind that kind of allows us to remain free and open. And it really is the key to staying in this flow, this creativity of life. See, we have this, our minds don't like ambiguity, right? Our brain doesn't like ambiguity. And so any time anything that's put into our presence that incites ambiguity creates this feeling of discomfort in us. We really do not like that. We're wired that way. And so we have this need to figure things out, this need to know things, to have answers. And so we really like plans, and we really like plans that we can stick to, that don't deviate. And yet life really doesn't work that way. So I want to break this down, this living everyday wonder. I want to break down each word of this. Living, right? Life. Life itself is active. It is creative. In fact, life, I would say, is creativity and activity. You don't have life without one or the other. Life itself is creating, and life is active. So living, what does it mean to live? To live means to create, to be active in our creativity, to be active in creating thought, in creating the experience around us, in creating life itself. I mean, life is the thing creating life. We are what is creating life. We are life, and we are what is creating life, because we are so much a part of and one with and at whole with everything, that we are at least one of that which creates. And so everything we see in life is either creating, or like a stagnant plan, is dying. So things that are not creative, and active, I suppose we could argue that they are actively dying or actively deconstructing. I mean, that there's truth to that. So even that itself, even the deconstruction is still creative and active. But things that are stagnant are not in that flow of creativity. Things that are stagnant are resisting the forward movement of life, are resisting that creativity. Okay, the next word, everyday wonder, living everyday wonder, every day. So this is not something that happens once. We are not creative and active once. We are creative and active every moment of every day. That kind of sounds exhausting. The good news is our very humanized version of the word active and creative, I think, far exceeds the necessity of the creativity and activity of life. Simply thinking, simply breathing, simply being is creative and active. What is not creative and active is resisting change, resisting flow, resisting life. So these places where we need to know, where we have to have definitive answers, and this is the way, this is the way it was 30 years ago, this is the way it is now, or there's something in our life we don't understand, and so we have come up with this story and this solution right now today that says this is what it is, because I have to have this answer so that I have some form of comfort in my life and control. So those places where we're trying to search for control, that is where we are not active. And those are the everyday pieces of this, right? We have everyday practices, spiritual practices that keep us grounded in this sense of knowing, different than needing to know, perhaps, maybe not. I don't. We'll have to think about that one. Depending how you use it, there is a universal knowing, right? Being in that knowing, which is also active, different than I need to know this. I have an answer. I know, right? There's like that local knowing and then that universal knowing. But these are the things that every day we are faced with, are looking at, are needing to apply, right? So if we are living, if we are active and creating, not once, but every day, we have thoughts, we have movement, we have a way of being, we have our mindset, our paradigm of life, our philosophy, our worldview, the values that we're given. These things play out every day through us and as our experience. And we have choice over all of that. How does that fit into our plan? And how are we approaching and looking at these perhaps now foreseen, unforeseen things, right? We are every day looking at how is life showing up unexpectedly, because when we release that idea of control, that stagnant control, when we release that, there is a great element of life that is not in our control. In fact, we might say all of life is not in control. We don't have control over anything. And at times that can seem scary, and at other times that can be really liberating. We're not in control of anything. And yet we have choice. We have choice how we want to show up every day. And in fact, in every moment, we have choice. How do we want to show up in every moment of every day? And lastly, wonder. Living everyday wonder. Wonder being the key that ties together living, being creative and active, and making choices every day. How do we make those choices? How do we choose to be active and creative? And when we approach this with a sense of wonder, this sense of questioning, I wonder what that would be like. I wonder how this is going to play out. I wonder what's going to show up today. Those are very different questions than, I need to know this. I need to feel comfortable. I need to give my brain that sense of comfort and knowing, because we don't like ambiguity. Wonder even sounds scary if we really open up to that, if we're really honest. The idea of wonder is like, oh, not only am I not in control, but I don't get to know. I don't get to know the answer. And there might be things in life where there are answers what we do know, even if just temporarily. But wonder itself puts us in this state of mind of we have to trust. We have to trust something other than ourselves. We have to trust the world. We have to trust the universe. We have to maybe even trust other people, that life is going to continue showing up. Well, life itself is creative and active, and it is creative and active every day. And I don't think we have to wonder whether life is going to show up. It's how life shows up. I wonder what is possible. I wonder what we can create here. I wonder how we can make an experience in life that works. I wonder how I can be part of creating a world that works for everyone. So in living everyday wonder, we are every day creating, we are active in this creating, making this choice about how we want to show up. And when we show up in wonder, we are allowing room for that flow of life. We are taking part in actively choosing to create life in a way that works for everyone rather than in a way that I think works for me, which usually tends to be in a way that means I need control for me, which is stagnant, which actually disrupts not only your life but the flow of life for other people. Now we have things bumping into this stagnant way of being, whereas wonder is literally free and flowing. We are not attached to these specific outcomes and expectations that we have created in our desire for mental comfort. Ernest Holmes, he's the guy who put together the texts on all of these philosophies from around the world, these wisdom teachings that showed up again and again and again from throughout history. He put these texts together and formed this philosophy of the science of mind, right? So Ernest Holmes says about this, he says, even the common things of life assume a natural goodness, beauty, and dignity when viewed as a whole. And isn't that what we're doing? If we're looking at this, living everyday wonder, living to be alive, what does it mean to live, to create, and to be active? And we must, as part of that, understand that the entire universe, all of it, the whole, is a oneness, that all of life, everything we can possibly imagine, the entire universe and beyond, the multiverse and whatever created that, whatever exists, not in time and space, the thing that created time and space, the entire world we live, and realms beyond that we don't even know about, that all must be part of life, and it must be creative. Otherwise, it would have destroyed itself. If it was destructive, certainly there would have been enough time in the 13.8 billion years for it to have destroyed itself already, I would think. But it is creative. It created, its nature is creative, and it is active and creating. It is doing this consistently. And for us, that shows up as on a day-to-day, that shows up every day. Life is creating. And so we must then view it all as good. We must view it as there is this singular flow of life that is moving towards a greater expression of itself and not a lesser expression of itself. When we view all of this as a whole, when we recognize that everything, all of life is part of the whole, and yet our mind has this part of it that wants to not experience the discomfort of ambiguity. That is a very old part of our mind that is a protective mechanism for sure. And perhaps we are evolving out of that, growing out of the need for that. But currently, as far as I know, we all still have that part in our mind that wants to make sense of things that are ambiguous. And in doing so, we actually create these solidified, stagnant thoughts that create a perception of separation from the whole, that there is all of that, and then there is this. And we have a duality. We have two. We don't have an infinite. Oneness means an infinity, that life must be infinite. You can't have a separation in infinity. And so these thoughts then are actually opposing our own good. Ernest Holmes also says, when a person stands in awe of grandeur, something deep within them responds. Something within them embraces the ocean. Something within them melts into the mountain, and they become one with these things. When we are in wonder, when we approach life every day, right? When we living every day in wonder, when we look at life with this sense of wonder, we actually bring ourselves back into oneness with them. We recognize that there is not this sense of separation that we have kind of trained ourselves to see and even look for. But with wonder, we can retrain ourselves to find the oneness, to find the connection, to find that which melts us back into the whole of it all. And so really, the call to action here, the thing that we are being called to do, what's being asked of us, is simply to interrupt our desire for definitive answers. We love definitive answers. We love to label things and put things in boxes and organize life into these very convenient ways of being. And we know fully well that that is not how life shows up. Life does not show up in clearly marked columns and boxes and all of this stuff, right? We love definitive answers. However, life does not work that way. So we are being asked to and this is not just because this is the topic for the week. Life itself currently is asking all of us to reassess what we think we know about life, to stop defaulting to our definitive answers about people, about this group, about that group, about work, about life, about family, about how we eat, about how all of the things, any box that we think we've created about life. Life is asking us to reassess how we view what our stagnant choice has been on that box. And perhaps even do away with the boxes altogether. But that begins by interrupting our desire for definitive answers. So that is our go-to. We go first to the definitive answer. And if we already have one like banked in our mind, it pops up real quick. And so to pay attention to that, to simply ask questions. At first, that thought's going to come up. And then when we realize it has come up, that our default answer has come up, pause as soon as you can and just ask a question about it. Is that true? Is that really what I think? Is that really how that shows up? Is that really true about this person? Whatever the question is, something that puts you in a state of wonder, a question that, and maybe we still think it's true, but simply to be in that state of questioning. And then slowly, little by little, we get to a point where we go to that question first before our definitive answer, our default answer comes up. We go to that place of wonder, to that place of questioning, and it brings us back into this state of flow, into this state of creativity that life exists in already. And so in living everyday wonder, by being in this mindset of wonder, we are able to interrupt that thought process. We are able to interrupt that desire to create a sense of knowing, a sense of comfort, which is actually a facade for a way of life that really creates a stagnant way of being, that creates friction and opposition to the flow of life. So by asking questions, by remaining in the state of wonder, we move back into this sense of oneness, into the sense of wholeness. We move back into this free-flowing movement of life, into the creativity of life. And life actually gets to show up differently for us. We actually have life show up in a way that perhaps works for us, in a way that works perhaps for everyone. So living everyday wonder, life-changing, freeing, and if anything else, I think it'll just bring some more joy into our lives.